he had such a great game, a double-double, and I thought that even in the first half, I thought he was playing really well. To have, double-digit assists and just the floor game that he was playing. I liked his confidence. I liked it. Even the play before he tried to attack, we didn't quite get the rebound down there, but I liked it and I liked the shot. I decided not to call a timeout and let it play on, and the crowd was really behind us. It was a fun game for the guys. It really was.
Hey Rip City, this is Anthony Simons, and it's time to open the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, episode 125 of The Briefcase, presented by our friends at Spirit Mountain Casino. I am Casey Holdahl, and that was Trailblazers assistant coach Nate Bjorkgren discussing the Trailblazers' victory versus the Jazz Thursday night at Moda Center. Nate Bjorkgren filling in for Chauncey Billups, who missed the Jazz game and the next game versus the Mavericks due to the death of his grandmother. Condolences to Chauncey and his family. But the Trailblazers able to do right by Chauncey in their first game after the break for Christmas, hosting the Jazz and winning that game thanks to a Scoot Henderson buzzer beater, which we'll hear from Scoot. We'll see the buzzer beater on this edition of the Briefcase. Capped off a win versus the Jazz after being embarrassed by the Jazz the last time they played Utah at Moda Center. Also another great game from Deni, a guy who has shown time and time again, I think since going to the bench, that he is definitely a building block in this piece going forward. Also a great game from Shaedon Sharpe as well. So we'll talk about that game. We'll talk about Scoot's buzzer beater. We'll talk about Deni Avdija, Shaedon Sharpe, and we'll look at where the Trailblazers stand in terms of their record, both in terms of the regular season record and their record versus the spread, on this edition of the Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Will the Trailblazers get their second win of December and some redemption with a 122-120 victory versus the Jazz at Moda Center Thursday night? A very good game for both teams, really. The Jazz, a great three-point shooting game for them. I believe they shot better or at 50% from three on, I think, like 50 attempts. Trailblazers did a really nice job of staying in the game and staying focused defensively, even when the Utah Jazz were hitting a bunch of shots, and were able to gut out the victory by 2 points going away. And another buzzer beater too, which it feels like the Blazers have had quite a few buzzer beaters lately. Obviously, you had the Ant winner a few games ago. You have Scoot doing it versus the Utah Jazz, but even like quarter buzzer beaters, I feel like we've had a lot lately. Scoot had that one half-court shot of 4 or 5 games ago. I believe Ant had the three-pointer at the end of the third quarter, and then he ended up getting the buzzer beater on that one-handed look. So yeah, just for whatever reason, Trailblazers hitting some shots late in games, late in close games, which, when you're in a game late, you open yourself up for the possibility of having some success in late game situations. So it's nice to see the Blazers, even as a young team, having some success in those situations. So basically, the Blazers go on that road trip to Texas, end up losing to the Spurs by 20 something, losing to the Mavs by, I think, 24. Come home, have a couple days off, as I mentioned, for the holiday, and then face the Jazz day after Christmas, or Boxing Day. I think it was Boxing Day at least, and also the first day of Hanukkah. Jazz go on after a very close first half. The Jazz go on a 16-0 run to start the second half, and at that point in time, particularly with the way the last game versus the Jazz went, in which the Trailblazers lost by, I think, 42 points to a Jazz team missing the majority of their best players. The Jazz go on a 16-0 run to start the second half on Thursday night. And I think your assumption at that point is like, well, all right, they played a pretty good first half. Now they're going to get run out of their own building once again by the Utah Jazz, who, again, were hitting just three-pointer after three-pointer after three-pointer. Blazers playing pretty good defense, playing not necessarily as much flow on the offensive end as you would like to see in that third quarter, but they weren't playing especially bad. It was just that the Jazz were hitting shot after shot after shot, and I'm definitely not one of those people that's like, well, if the other team's hitting shots, there's nothing you can do, or if you're not hitting shots, some of those shots just aren't going down, so what can you do? I don't believe in that. There's some element of that. Obviously, luck does play some kind of role in all of sports. But you have some control over whether or not the shots you're taking are going to go in. And you have some control over whether or not the opponent you're facing is hitting shots on a night-to-night basis. Now, granted, again, some nights they are going to hit shots. Some nights you are going to hit shots. Some nights you're not going to be able to hit the broadside of a barn. Same with them. But you do have some control over that. So the whole hitting shots or not hitting shots, like, sure, there's parts of that, but you have an effect on the game. There's a reason why the best teams generally win more games than the teams that aren't very good, because they can have an effect on those games even when their shots aren't going down, or even when their opponent shots are going down. So the Blazers get down in the third quarter of that game versus the Jazz. Once again, you're probably thinking to yourself, like, I guess that's just going to be what this game is, a fun first half, and let's see how this thing finishes off. But the Trailblazers end up rallying in the third quarter. I think really impressive too that they didn't let go of the cord, which is something that Chauncey has talked about this season, which is that, even when you're losing, and even if you start to lose bad, like, you got to keep playing. You got to stick with it. Are you still going to end up losing? Yeah, a lot of times you are. But there is a difference between losing by 10 or 20 and losing by 40. And when the Blazers lost that game to Utah, I think I even asked Jeremy Grant in the locker room after that game. I was like, "Is there a difference between losing by 20 and losing by 40?" And the look that he gave me was like, "Are you kidding me? Of course there's a difference. Like, there's an enormous difference. It's those two things are completely separate. Like, one, losing by 20, the game gets away from you, the other team scores a bit, you put in your bench, the other team maybe doesn't put in their bench, they're able to ride it out. And, that's a comfortable victory. 40-point loss is like, you got punked. Like, like, particularly at your own house, like, someone else came into your own house and beat you down. Losing by 20 stinks, but you lost by 20. Losing by 40, you got punked. And so there is a difference there. And so, at that point in time for the Blazers, they get down, I think 15 points in that third quarter. And at that point in time, you're like, all right, let's just see if you guys can stick with this thing. And even if you're not going to win it, at least go out there and perform well. Let's see some of these young guys get some minutes as well, and just go out there and conduct yourself in a responsible manner. And the Blazers did even more than that. They not only did they stick with it, but they actually pushed and they got better as the game went on. So they're able to get the deficit down to, I believe, 8 by the start of the fourth quarter. And then both Deni Avdija and Shaedon Sharpe have really good fourth quarters. Deni, 14 points, 4 rebounds in the fourth quarter. Shaedon, 12 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists in the fourth quarter. Deni goes on a personal 7-0 run to get the Blazers a 6-point lead with 2 minutes remaining. Lauri Markkanen then goes on a 5-0 run to tie the game at 120 with 45 seconds to play. And at that point in time, it's Portland's ball. They get the ball back. And Nate Bjorkgren, as he mentioned there in the open, decided that he was like, "Hey, we're not going to call a timeout." We've been in this situation multiple times. As I mentioned, this is kind of the second or third time the Blazers have been in a late game, tie game situation. And, the main goal is to not leave any time on the clock. Second goal is to get a good look at a game winner. And so, Scoot brings the ball down, takes his time, screen and roll with DeAndre Ayton, kind of gets to a spot on the floor right inside the paint, a bit bottled up, basically like takes a little step back, gets a high arcing shot and gets it to go with 0.1 seconds left, which I don't think you can even get a tip in at 0.1 seconds. There's some debate about what the rule is, but like 0.1 seconds is like, it's not even time to touch a ball, basically. So at that point in time, the game's not over technically, because you still got to play out that 0.1 second, but the Blazers getting that victory 122-120. I believe that was Scoot's only points of the fourth quarter. And, as you're going to hear him talk about here in a minute, Scoot was like, "I'm going to take this shot." Like, there was it wasn't necessarily a call. As I mentioned, they didn't call a timeout, which, I love not letting the defense set up. Just go out there and you guys know what you're supposed to do. Get a bucket. You're not going to lose the game. If you're in a situation where you're down and you have the last possession, you call a timeout. I mean, you can it's debatable, but that's a situation where, I would probably call a timeout every time, because you want to make sure you're going to get a good shot. You want to have a plan in place. When you're tied and there's less than 24 seconds left on the clock, that, hey, as long as we hold onto this ball and then make our move with about 3 or 4 seconds left, bare absolute worst thing that's going to happen to us is we're going to go to overtime, and we're going to have a good chance to win the game as well. So, that's what they decided to do. So rather than calling a timeout, they just have Scoot bring the ball down. As I mentioned, a little high screen and roll. Jazz aren't really fooled by it, but Scoot goes ahead and makes a great play, gets up a high arcing shot, and gets a game winner, which, really good to see Scoot have some success in that game. Also, too, because Scoot played a great game in that one as well. I believe 16 points and 10 assists for Scoot in that one. One of his better games, I would say, probably as a pro. And I really like too, and he was asked about this post game as well. Nate Bjorkgren decided that he was going to stick with the guys who were playing well. And a lot of times, you get down to close game late, you kind of look back more to your vets. They ended that game with I believe with Ant and Denny and Shaedon and Da and I think Tumani on the floor. And you know, a lot of those guys had good games. Jeremy had a pretty good game, but I don't believe he was in the game fourth quarter. Ant really struggled in that game offensively. He was not in the game to close that one out. So a chance for some of the younger guys to kind of show what they can do and get some of those reps and some of those opportunities to go out there and make some plays, which, generally they don't always get. And a lot of times, you want to play to win, and the Blazers are playing to win. And sometimes, that results in deferring more to your vets. But particularly when you have your young guys who are playing well, and they're the ones that get you back in the game, like you gotta roll with those guys. And if you're gonna lose with those guys, you lose with them. That's fine. But like when you play well enough to get the minutes, you should play well enough, or you should get the opportunity then to make the mistakes if that's how it goes, while also having the opportunity to do the right thing and getting some of the glory that comes along with getting victories late in games, which it was great to see Scoot do that. So, as I mentioned, a very close game throughout. 7 lead changes in the fourth quarter, 3 ties in the fourth quarter as well. But the Blazers able to pull that one out with a 12-footer with 0.1 seconds left. Thanks very much to Scoot Henderson. And Scoot obviously getting the game winner. As I mentioned, Deni and Shaedon were really good in that game as well. But really an overall team effort for the Trailblazers. 14 points, 7 rebounds, 14 points, 3 rebounds, and an assist for Jeremy Grant. 18 points, 12 rebounds for DeAndre Ayton to go with an assist, a steal, and a block. I thought a really solid game from DeAndre Ayton as well. DeAndre has really been on a nice little run lately. Not like blowing the doors off or anything, but just like playing really consistent basketball since he came back from that injury. And it's really been nice to see. His mid-range jumper is obviously dropping as it often does. And I just really feel like they're getting a lot of really, really good play from DeAndre Ayton as of late. 27 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists for Shaedon Sharpe. Another very good game for Shaedon Sharpe. 11 of 18 from the field, 5 of 10 from 3 for Shaedon. Again, a guy who, I think it's really starting to sink in for Shaedon that like you are most successful when you're being aggressive towards the rim. And he took 10 3-pointers, so it's not like he's not getting a lot of looks from deep, but when he is at his best when he's putting pressure on the defense in the paint. And I think more and more and more and more we're starting to see that Shaedon kind of coming around on that stuff and being more consistent about playing that style of basketball. And he was able to continue to do that. Really, sky's the limit for Shaedon. 27 points, 7 to 10 from the free throw line for Deni Avdija to go with 8 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, and a block for Deni. Deni has been, again, I think there's a good argument to make that Deni's been Portland's best player this season. And, after a bit of a tough start in the starting lineup, Deni has been great coming off the bench. He's basically playing the same amount of minutes he was playing coming off the bench, but playing much better basketball. I think, you're probably getting to the point with Deni where he probably does deserve to get back into the starting lineup. And I don't know exactly if that's going to happen, if they're going to shuffle some guys around, but he's playing well enough to be in the starting lineup. And, you probably lose a little something maybe by putting him in the starting lineup because he's such a great playmaker that it probably makes some sense to have him in that second unit. But again, just from a perspective of who's playing well and who's played the best this season, I think Deni really has a really strong argument that he has been Portland's best player this year. And that's even coming off the bench. 30 points, or not 30 points, 31 minutes for Deni in that victory versus the Jazz. And, just really making a lot of plays on both ends of the ball. He had a great block leading to a fast break, coast to coast not rebound, coast to coast layup for Deni. So again, he's just playing really good basketball right now. Also, another thing you kind of noticed in that game versus the Jazz too, that Nate Bjorkgren kind of shortened up the rotation a little bit. Blazers played 9 guys, but Chris Murray only played 7 minutes in that game, and only 13 minutes for Donovan Clingan. So everyone else playing basically at least 30 minutes, which again, that's a little bit of a tightening up, which, when you're in a close game and you're trying to get that win, that makes sense why you would maybe kind of shore things up a little bit in that rotation. And then, as I mentioned, 18 points actually for Scoot Henderson, 10 assists, 2 steals, and a block in just under 30 minutes. Scoot having probably his best game of his career, or at least right up there for the best game of Scoot's career. Shot 50% from the field and 50% from three. Scoot's kind of hit his foul line extended 3-point shot has really, it's been money lately. Like he's really put in a lot of work, particularly from that part of the court, and it really seems to be paying off for him because when he's taking it now, like it seems really reliable for him, and it seems like he's getting those shots to fall right now. Where as before, like that long range shooting was an issue for Scoot, and will continue to be something they'll need to improve upon. But it really seems like it's come around. The form looks good. He's taking it with confidence. He's not rushing it, and he's being discerning about when he's taking those shots because he is best when he's getting into the paint and creating things for his teammates. But if you're a guard in the NBA, you have to have a passable 3-point shot, and Scoot is starting to get there, which I think is really great news. So you saw a little bit of everything in that game versus the Jazz. Trailblazers getting their 10th win of the season. Jazz now 7-22. And as I mentioned, Blazers getting just a little bit of redemption from that embarrassing loss that they had to the Utah Jazz a few weeks back. So now we'll see what they're able to do in these next two games as they close out 2024 on Saturday versus the Dallas Mavericks. No Luka Doncic in that one. And then closing out the year for real, the year, not the season, versus the Philadelphia 76ers on December 30th, then having the 31st and the 1st off, and then starting a week-long, I think, 5-game road trip in Los Angeles versus the Lakers, where the Oregon Ducks will also be playing Ohio State. I've heard that we're not going to be leaving early enough to catch the start of that game, which is a bummer for an Oregon alumni like myself, but business is business, and actually, probably don't want to leave early on Christmas, or excuse me, on New Year's Day anyways, considering that, people do stuff on New Year's Eve. They stay up late. And so I understand taking a later flight, but it'd be nice if we were there a little bit earlier. Just one man's opinion. So, a very good game for the Trailblazers and a chance to close out December, which has been a pretty tough month for Portland, with a little bit of momentum. So, we'll see how they do versus the Mavericks, a team that they gave a very good game to the last time they played in Portland. Obviously, a much larger margin of victory in the most recent game in Dallas, but I believe the Mavericks only beating the Trailblazers by 3 or 4 in the last game here at Moda Center, and that was with Luka Doncic and without Kyrie Irving. This time, I think we're probably going to get the opposite direction. I think we probably will have Kyrie Irving and Klay Thompson, and no Luka Doncic, who is now out, I believe, with a calf injury for at least the next month. So, we'll see how they're able to finish up 2024, but getting a win in their first game back at home in this little 3-game homestand before the end of 2024 is definitely good news. And speaking of the new year, consider ringing in the new year at Spirit Mountain Casino at the Chocolate Factory New Year's Eve celebration, the ultimate casino New Year's Eve celebration. Whether you're looking for a night of thrilling entertainment or a festive escape, Spirit Mountain Casino Resort is the perfect destination for your New Year's Eve travel plans. Join the folks at Spirit Mountain Casino for an evening of fun with drink specials, gaming action, and a traditional countdown at midnight. So make this New Year's Eve unforgettable at Spirit Mountain Casino's New Year's Eve and Grand Ronde. Gather your group, book your stay, and get ready for a celebration you'll never forget at Spirit Mountain Casino. Elevate your game. Check out the folks at Spirit Mountain Casino for your New Year's Eve party needs. That's December 31st, by the way. We're leading into 2025 on January 1st. Get a room, stay the night, have a great time, count down to midnight, play some games, win some money, and enjoy a lucky start to 2025 at Spirit Mountain Casino. All right, well, let's go ahead and hear from both Scoot Henderson and Deni Avdija after the victory versus the Jazz Thursday night at Moda Center. Again, Scoot getting the game winner and having a really nice game throughout. Deni really the driving factor along with Shaedon Sharpe and getting the victory in the fourth quarter. Deni is, I think we're starting to see too, that he's a guy that when he puts his mind to something, it's good things happen. So let's go ahead and hear from both those players. First off, here's Scoot Henderson after getting the game winner on Thursday versus the Utah Jazz at Moda Center.
So walk us through that final play.
It was like me and you two and me and you. I'm like, all right, bet. I was gonna end up taking the last shot anyway. I had the ball in my hand, so. But I mean, you dream of plays like that. That was the best situation possible for me. And it was fun to play the whole game though, man. Everybody was playing defense, locked in. We were just talking about when we playing like that and we're all connected, it's fun. So
when the possession started, you figured you were going to take the final shot?
Yeah, so.
Was that called, or you just decided?
I just decided.
You just decided.
Yeah.
You were saying you, me. Was that you talking with Deni?
DA. DeAndre Ayton. He was just saying, like, it's me, you right now. Me, you, like, screen and roll type of thing. And whatever happens, we're going to live with it. So, you know, I was originally trying to get to the rim. I seen Walker step up. I'm like, oh, I'm beat him. But he started tracking my steps. I felt him, and then I just hit a little pause and then a little fade. So.
Can you talk about after the shot went down and the celebration? I think you stuck your tongue out. Is that like is that your signature? Or is that like
that, man? I think that's like default for me. Like that's how I'm feeling. Like I done did that a few times, and I don't know what just happened. I don't even think about it, but I mean, get to that money, and that's what I'm really thinking. So.
I think Simon's also stuck his tongue out after his game winner. Is that a team-wide
You did?
thing going on? Yeah.
I didn't see that. I gotta watch that.
You guys, the Jazz start the second half on a 16-0 run. What were you guys talking about in the huddle during that time, and what were you guys able to do to get back into the game and then push ahead?
Just to stay connected, man. Stay connected. Nobody veered off. We knew we were gonna go down in the game. I mean, basketball is a game of runs, so we didn't get too down during that stretch. We knew what we had to do, and that was locking defensively. Offense is gonna come and make itself, but we knew we had to lock in on the defensive side of the ball. I came in and tried my best to just lock in on that side. So yeah.
How do you go ahead?
Aside from the winning basket, you also had a good performance, 10 assists and only 1 turnover. Was there a part during the game where you felt different compared to other games as far as your control of it? And what would you take from this game as a stepping stone for the future?
I don't think I kind of like felt any different. I was just put in situations to make plays. The one where I dropped it off to DA, that was kind of drew up and in the huddle. So I was kind of just put in situations, and then, I was just finding guys. That's my talent, man. And whenever I can, make plays for other people, I think that's where I'm best. And I think my shots are going to come. I'm a point guard, so I got the ball in my hand pretty much the whole time. So
You've seemingly handled ups and downs very well, but given some recent struggles, did you need a game like this? Did you need a shot like that, a moment like that? Does that pump you up?
Nah, I don't need nothing, man. I need my family, my support, and God. Everything else is just everything's gonna be up and down anyway. So I don't think I needed a game like this. I think it was more just this is how the season goes, man. And I never get too high, I never get too low, like you said, and just try to maintain really.
What motivation was there, given what happened the last time you guys played them here, a 42-point loss,
Yeah.
and also Chauncey being out?
Yeah.
Do you guys want to win for him at all?
I mean, that was tough in general just to go through that. I don't think I played that one. But to get beat by them the first time they came in here, walked in our trap and took over. So we definitely had to get a little payback. And then I think just sending my condolences to Chauncey and his family. And, that was definitely for him. And hopefully he just come back and pumped up just as we are. So.
Obviously, you and Deni off the bench tonight, incredibly important in getting this win. What did you think of Deni's performance?
Bro, Deni is a force to be reckoned with, man. He's unstoppable when he gets downhill, I'll tell you that. And then he makes the right play. Strong as heck. He can shoot the ball. So, like I said this before, and he's very versatile, and he can play both ends of the floor. I think we're just going to continue to learn each other. And that's with everybody. We're just going to continue to learn each other and grow. We can't go nowhere but up.
He was kind of going at you a little bit in one of those plays late in the game where there was a defensive mix-up or something. Do you do you like that when guys?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, I was telling him. I'm like, he tell me afterwards. I'm like, he's like, my bad, man. I didn't know. It was too loud, and I'm like, bro, you good? You ain't got to apologize. Like in the heat of the battle, I know what's going on, and I know how emotional the basketball game can get. So I'm like, nah, you good, bro. I heard you, but I was telling you, no, you step up right there. That's you. But he heard me out. I heard him out. That's what teammates do.
Some good stuff there from Scoot, and a real I don't care kind of feel from Scoot in that one too. I think when you're a young player, you got people telling you should do this, you should do that, play like this, play like that, don't do this, don't do that. And I think for Scoot, he's just getting to the point where he's like, you know what, like I'm gonna do me. Like I'm gonna play the way that I think makes the most sense for me. I'm going to take coaching. I'm going to listen what they're asking me to do. But at a certain point, like I just gotta go out there and play my game. And I think we're starting to see from Scoot that I think he's probably a little annoyed by some of the criticisms of his game, and particularly in comparison to kind of some of the other people in his class. And so I think for Scoot at this point, he's like, you know what, man, like people are gonna say what they're gonna say. I'm just gonna go out and play the way that I think I should play. And I thought it was great that he was like, yeah, I mean, I'm the point guard. I'm out there. I got the ball in my hands. I'm gonna take the last shot. And again, when the game is tied, that makes a lot of sense. The game's not tied, you maybe need to run something a little more planned out than just like I'm gonna get my shot. But when the game is tied, I think that's a perfectly fine way to go about doing it. And you get a look in the paint. That's gonna be a pretty good look regardless. Now, granted, kind of a turnaround fadeaway jumper can be a pretty tough shot, but he did get it to go, and that's what matters. So I was really happy for Scoot. I also thought too, Scoot's comments about Denny there, he him and Denny had, there was a scene, I believe in the fourth quarter where, as Scoot kind of mentions, the Jazz are coming down in secondary transition. Scoot's got a man, and then another Jazz player comes up, and Denny wants Scoot to go and flare off to take the secondary man, and he's going to get the guy who's bringing the ball up. And there was some confusion there about who was going to do what. Guy ends up taking a 3-pointer and nailing it. I think it might have been Laurie Markkinen, but Denny was like, "Hey man, like that's what you were supposed to be there." Like, and you could, I mean, obviously we couldn't hear what they were saying because we're on press row, but you could tell that like some very, very stern kind of like, "Hey man, that was your man," and probably Scoot giving some of that back to him as well. Um, but then, and then I think a lot of us were kind of watching how the game progressed from there between the two of those guys. And I even noticed at one point in time, like Denny, I think got an and one and ended up on the floor. Scoot was right there to pick him up and cheer him on. And, that's kind of stuff where these guys want to win. And so, it's not a big deal to have some disagreements and some arguments and some accountability on the court. In fact, it's a big deal in terms of that is the things you need in order to have success as a young team, especially. So I think it's really good to see and great for Scoot to address that as well and be like, yeah, like we're gonna have some terse comments and moments when we're on the court, but we're trying to win, and I know what it is when we're trying to win, and guys get emotional, guys get upset, guys get frustrated, and all I do is take that as understanding that we're in that moment, and it's an emotional time, and everyone is really serious about wanting to get a win. So you're gonna probably be a little more curt and maybe a little less. Less, I don't even know what the best way to put it, but you're in a game. Like you got to say things quickly. You got to be demonstrative, and sometimes that's going to come across a certain way. But as long as everyone realizes that we're on a team and we're trying to get to the same place together, that's a good thing. And so I was really glad to see those guys kind of get into each other a little bit, and then move on, and both those players having success in the fourth quarter goes to show that like you can have those kind of discussions, and you can have that kind of accountability and still go on and win games. In fact, that's the way it should work. So again, just just a lot of little small scenes in that game where you come away feeling like, yeah, I was glad to see these things. Like it seems like some progress is being made. These are the kinds of traits and some of the factors that you want to see out of a team when they're in close game situations, or when they're just trying to win a game in general. So I thought, really a little something of everything in that game for the Trailblazers on Thursday night. A lot of things to feel good about in that game for Portland as well. So let's go ahead and hear from Deni, his comments after the game as well. Again, Deni, I think probably Portland's best player in that game, and has been Portland's best player, I think, in the broad strokes this season. And, really like yeah, the more Deni plays, the more I think you feel really good about that move that Joe Cronin and his staff made on draft night to get Deni Avdija. And I think that it's really been a nice factor for the Trailblazers this season. So let's go ahead and hear from Deni Always has really interesting, smart comments as well about the game and about his approach to it, and just the way that he views being an athlete and being in the NBA, and a guy who's really supportive of his teammates as well, which I think is great. So here's what Deni had to say after the victory on Thursday night versus the Utah Jazz. Well, Deni, first off, just your thoughts on the game, particularly the second half after they come out and go 16-0 to start the third. You guys are able to rally back, end up winning the game, a lot of it due to your play. So just could you comment on particularly the second half and how well you guys played, what you're able to do to stay in it when you got down?
I feel like, most of the games that started the second half like that, we kind of let go. We kind of let go of the gas. And I feel like today we showed some sort of character. I feel like today was a little different. We showed energy. We've been humble. We made the right shots, and I feel like we were together, and we didn't give up on any play. And I feel like everybody did great today. I couldn't say it was only just me. The ball went a little bit in the basket for me, but any other, I feel like, player contributed amazing for that win. So I was happy that we kind of broke the streak of letting go of the gas.
What did you see on that final play with that shot that Scoot made?
What do I see? I see Scoot having a lot of confidence, knowing where he wants to get to on the floor, and I'm so happy for him because he's working nonstop. And we kind of work out together in practice. And I feel like when I see his success and I see him making that big shot with confidence, that's what a player needs, is to keep shooting, keep believing in himself, and I feel like Scoot did it. And I hope he's just going to continue for sure.
Was there added motivation after what happened last time you guys played them?
Definitely. As I said, I think I said it pregame, I feel like there's certain nights that it's just going to happen. And I feel like it wasn't about Utah, it was about us. And I feel like today we came to play. Everybody was in a good vibe today, in a good mood. We made plays for each other. We were together, and it was a very fun game to play. So I'm happy.
How much did your defense lead to offense tonight? I mean, you had that block, you go coast to coast, and that was obviously a big play momentum-wise. It seems like you, and just the entire team making plays on the defensive end, it seemed like it really did transition to positive plays on the offensive end.
It definitely did. And, I had that one play, but I mean, it was everybody. Tumani, big shout out to Tumani, because Tumani comes in every night, even sometimes when you have nights that the ball doesn't really go in for him. But he's a great player, and he really put that mentality of defense on us, and he kind of leads that, and I feel like everybody follows, and I feel like we were just there from the beginning. We had that slump in the beginning of the second half, but we bounced right back. So can't really. Sorry.
Do you still know how to outlet pass, or does it matter anymore?
I still know how to outlet pass. I think I had one for Scoot too, but.
When you get the ball, you're not even thinking about that, right? You're just going.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Sometimes I feel like I'm getting a little tired, so I gotta pass it a little bit sometimes, for sure.
לא ירדת מהמגרש ברבע האחרון, שיחקת את כל ה-12 דקות. זה היה משהו שככה תכננת או ראית עם המאמן הנוכחי?
לא, האמת היא שאני לא כל כך שולט בדקות שלי, ויש פעמים שאני משחק כמות דקות מסוימת כזאתי או אחרת, אבל בסופו של דבר אני מנסה לעשות את מה שאני יכול בדקות שיש לי. וזה לשחק הכי טוב שאני יכול, וזה לשחק עם ביטחון, וזה לאיים על הסל. בין אם אני אשחק 34 דקות, מצוין. אבל אם אני משחק גם 22 דקות, אין לי תלונות, אני עושה הכל בשביל הקבוצה.
היית מצטיין המשחק ויש רחשים עוד פעם בקהל בין האוהדים, אני שומע, השחקן הכי טוב שלנו וכאלה, היה נקודה היום שאתה מרגיש שהייתה איזשהו עוד עליית מדרגה במקומות שאתה אמרת שאתה רוצה להיות אליהם, שאתה חושב שאתה יכול להגיע אליהם?
אני חושב שכבר הראיתי בעבר בחלק מהמשחקים את היכולות שלי. אני חושב שלוקח זמן להתאקלם לקבוצה חדשה. ככל שהזמן עובר ב-NBA אני מרגיש שיש לי יותר ביטחון, אני מרגיש שאני מבסס את המשחק שלי יותר טוב, יש המון דברים שאני צריך לעבוד עליהם עדיין, ואני עדיין לא חושב שאני שחקן שלם כמו שאני רוצה להיות, אבל אני בהחלט עובד כל יום ומשתפר ולומד, וכיף לי להשתתף ולהיות חלק מהניצחונות האלה ולשחק כמו שאני משחק. עוד פעם, אני לא חושב שכל משחק עכשיו אני אשחק ברמה כזו, אבל אני בהחלט אהיה אגרסיבי ואשתדל לעשות את המיטב.
רצית את הכדור האחרון גם?
רציתי את הכדור האחרון, אבל אתה יודע מה? כשאני חושב על זה, סקוט עובד כל כך קשה, מגיע לו, ואני מפרגן לו ב100%.
היה מהלך כמה דקות לפני ששניכם ירדתם להגנה וככה צעקתם אחד על השני מי סוגר, עוצר את הכדור. המאמן קרא לזה healthy, הוא אמר שיש אנשים שמתקשרים בקבוצה ונלחמים וזה מה שהוא רוצה לראות, וסקוט אמר אותו דבר. המשחק גם נגמר בחיבוק מאוד גדול שרצת לה ונתת לו אחרי סל ניצחון. איך זה כחלק מאלמנט של הבנייה וההתקדמות ובהכרה של אחד של השני?
אני נהנה, אני חושב שהאמוציות זה חלק מהמשחק, ואני חושב שהכעס והזעם וזה בלעת המשחק, אני חושב שזה בריא. בסופו של דבר אתה לא רוצה שהקבוצה שלך כולם יעמדו ואף אחד לא ידבר עם אף אחד, בסופו של דבר גם דברים כאלה שנראים מהצד לא תמיד הכי טוב, הם בעצם מאוד מאוד בריאים לקבוצה. כן, היה בינינו אי הבנה, אבל אני חושב שהחלקתי לו על זה.
So there you go, Deni Avdija discussing the victory. I believe also too quite a bit of Hebrew in there as well for our Israeli fans out there. I always really appreciate Oren who covers the team, pitching some questions to Deni in Hebrew. It's nice. It breaks things up a little bit. I enjoy it. I have no idea what they're talking about, of course, but I just like the music of it. It's nice. And so yeah, if people in the comments want to let me know what they were talking about there, that'd be great. So really nice game from Deni. And again, just a really great run that Deni is on right now. You know, I think he understands his role on this team. He understands, you know, that we're building towards something and that, you know, on a night-to-night basis, maybe not as many wins as you might hope to see. A guy who I think probably takes losing as hard as anyone in the locker room and wants to win as much as anyone in the locker room as well. So, you know, those are the kind of guys you want on your team. And again, I think we're just learning from Deni as well that, like, just a whole lot to offer and so fast too. Like that's, I think for those of us who probably didn't watch a whole lot of Washington games over the last couple seasons, you know, just a real surprise in terms of the athleticism and the speed and the handle, I think as well. Deni has been a really good player for this team, a really important addition to this team, and a player that I think is really going to have a lot of role and importance on this team going forward. And a guy too where, you know, you got a whole lot of young guys and Deni is young too, but he's got enough experience in the league to where, you know, he's seen some things. He's got a bit of a veteran presence. He can speak up in the locker room while also still having a ways to grow as well, and growing with the Scoots and the Shaedons and the Donovans of the team. So again, just a really smart move. I've really enjoyed having Deni on the team, and I imagine that as the year goes on, he will probably take on more and more of an important role on this team because he's definitely earned it. You know, there's no two ways around it. Deni has really provided this team with a lot of things that they've needed for a couple seasons now. And if he continues to play the way that he's playing, you know, you probably got to find him more minutes out there because he definitely deserves it. Well, before we wrap up this edition of the Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino, let's get to our betting on the Trailblazers segment. Trailblazers are now in 10-20 on the season, meaning they're 43% of the way to surpassing their Las Vegas win projection of 22.5 wins after 37% of the season. So 10 wins is 43% of the way to hitting 23 wins. 30 games is 37% of the season. So despite the fact that the Trailblazers have taken a bit of a dip in terms of their winning percentage in the month of December, they're still ahead of schedule to hit the over, which, you know, I think if they're able to continue along this path, which, you know, I think there's a lot of reason to believe they will, you know, I think hitting that over is very possible. Again, at 23 wins, you know, that they're almost halfway there already, and the season a little over a third of the way through it. So, you know, definitely, if you got that over, you at least look good right now. And again, you know, the way the seasons have ended for the Trailblazers as of late, you know, you probably want to get more wins now as opposed to having to rely on some wins later on in the season. But either way, as of right now, you are ahead in terms of hitting the over. But that's the long-term betting markets. In the short-term betting markets, Trailblazers are now 15-14-1 versus the spread this season. After failing to cover in their last 3 games, they were 6.5-point underdogs to the Spurs and ended up losing that game by 20. They were 12.5-point underdogs to the Mavericks and lost that game by 24. And oddly enough, they were favored by 3 points versus the Jazz, and they only ended up winning that game by 2. That was just the second game this season that the Trailblazers were favored going into a game. the last time they were favored. The only other time this season they were favored going into a game was also versus the Utah Jazz at home. Obviously, as I mentioned, they ended up losing that game by 42 points. So the Trailblazers are 1-1 versus the Jazz this season, but are 0-2 in terms of covering versus the Jazz because they were favored last time by 4 points, ended up losing by 42. And this time they were favored by 3 points, which I was a bit surprised by considering how the last game went. And the Blazers ended up winning that game by 2. So they got the win, weren't able to cover. You know what they say, good teams win, great teams cover, but you got to get the win in that situation. It would have been nice if they would at least won by 3. Scoot hit the 3-pointer instead. They end up getting a push, but the win is the best part of that anyways. But just kind of interesting that they've only been favored twice this season going into a game, both versus the Jazz. One was a blowout loss, and the other was a close victory, and neither one was a cover. And that will do it for this edition of The Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Thank you so much for joining me as always. I imagine we might get one more show in before the end of 2024, but if not, we'll be back from the road to start 2025. Thank you so much for joining me. As I mentioned, Saturday versus the Mavs, Monday versus the 76ers, and then that leads into a week-long road trip that starts versus the Los Angeles Lakers. So until then, thank you so much for joining me. As always, I am Casey Holdahl. You have been watching The Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Go Blazers.